Hi everyone, welcome to this chat on intentionality. And I talk about intentionality quite a bit in my coaching and in my professional life. And the reason that I talk about intentionality so much is because we can't change any habitual patterns in our lives, whether they are thoughts, behaviors, actions, processes, and things like that in our life, unless we are intentional about what needs to change, why it needs to change, and what are you going to get from that change. And so, in essence, what is it going to do for you? What is it going to do for the people around you? And again, making that connection back with the why. But the reason I talk about intentionality is because, yes, it's important to know and understand what do I need to change, why do I need to change it, and how do I need to change it. But there's a component of intentionality that you have to bring into consideration. Whereas if you really want to change those thoughts and those behaviors in your life, then you have to make decisions every day to support that change. Whether it again is thoughts, behaviors, or actions, you have to be intentional about how you're moving around in the world. And what I mean by this is what kinds of mechanisms do you have in place that makes you think about on a daily basis who you are in the world, who you want to be in the world, and if you're leading others, how do you practice congruence in what you're saying and who you're being? And as an example, if you are leading other people, whether it's in an organization, a community, a church, whatever it is, if you have a team of people, or even if you're just leading your family, people look at you in the actions and the behaviors that you're exhibiting every day. And when those actions and behaviors don't align with things that you've told them are important or should be important, or things that you value and that you care about, when those actions and those behaviors don't align with those words, then what happens is there's an incongruence between what you say and what you do. And that incongruence leads to a lack of trust. And one of the biggest areas that leaders struggle with, especially in large organizations, is trust. Now, you can't lead people if you don't have trust from your followers. If they don't believe that you're going to make the best decisions for them, for the team, or for the organization, then they're not going to do whatever it is that you want or need them to do. And when we talk about intentionality, it's about creating and maintaining trust. And what I mean by that is, if every time you stand in front of your team or in front of the people that you're leading, and you say that you value diversity, equity, inclusion, and you value them as team members, and you want to make sure that their team is being innovative and agile and leading the organization into the future. And yet the actions and the behaviors that you exhibit every day that other people see are not in alignment with those same values that you've identified to be true, then they see that and they call BS. All right? And they say, I can't trust that person because their actions don't match their words. And so when we talk about getting intentional, and let's continue on this example, right? And so if you are in a situation where you want to lead a modern and diverse organization into the future, you have to be willing to step into moments, and you have to be willing to embrace vulnerability. You have to be willing to say, I don't know in this area. And you have to be flexible when something comes up that questions or asks you to think about who you're being and how you're being. And especially if that is not in congruence with what you're saying is important.
So,
What do you actually have to do to get intentional about your specific behaviors and actions so that you're acting in alignment and you are modeling the behaviors and the actions that you want others to embody? The first thing is you have to actually be aware of them. You have to have consciously brought whatever those actions and behaviors are that are related to the value that you've identified out into the open. You have to understand why it's important, why other people should think that it's important, and why they should also act in accordance with the way that you're asking them to act and to embody. And so once you're aware of that, then you have to understand, how do you do it? How do other people do it? And why is it so important? And so once you understand, the theoretical background, the history, the direct tie to the values that you're trying to portray, and all of those things, then you actually have to define what needs to change. What are the specific behaviors? So defining in detail what actually needs to change, and becoming intentional about whatever it is that you've defined. And this is this could be something as simple as recognize. Let's talk about recognition. If you know that you need to be more intentional about recognizing your team members, then you need to have specific mechanisms and processes in place to help you be intentional. And so a mechanism might be having a prompt in your daily planner or in your online calendar that says, how can you recognize your employees today? How can you recognize the contributions of your family members or your team members today? And making sure that you've got some little nudge that reminds you that you have to embody these specific behaviors that you're asking other people to embody. All right, so you have to have the mechanisms, and then you also have to have the processes. And the mechanisms are the trigger that's going to remind you that you have to do something. And the processes are what facilitates your triggers. And so as far as your daily routines and your weekly routines that you've established, a process looks like dedicating a time and space to look at your triggers and making sure that you're being intentional about whatever it is that you've decided that you need to be intentional about. And so if we go back to the recognition example, a process might be establishing mechanisms, whether it's daily prompts to remind you that you need to do it, whether it is actually scheduling the time in your calendar to call out, send an email, or connect with your community in ways that model and embody the behaviors that you're asking them to. And so if you're thinking about recognition, then what is the actual thing that you're going to do? Are you going to, in your staff meetings, give 5 minutes in your schedule to say, I want to recognize this person for doing this? And if it is an email that you want to send, are you scheduling time to send that email? If it is something else, how are you incorporating that into your daily or weekly routines to remind you to do that? So your processes are going to facilitate your triggers. And so your mechanisms for what do you actually need to do to consciously remind yourself every day of what needs to happen. And then you just have to be intentional about acting on those mechanisms and processes that you've established. And so if the time comes up, I scheduled 5 minutes during my staff meeting, but in the staff meeting you just jump right in and you skip over it, then you're not being intentional about holding that time in that space. And if you have told your staff that every week you're going to dedicate 5 minutes to recognizing your employees and then you skip over it, 1 week they think, oh, we didn't do that. And then you skip over it the next week, and you skip over it the next week, and you skip over it the next week. what you're doing is your habitual patterns are telling them that recognizing employees is not important, right? And again, recognition is just one example. And so whatever your habit is that you've defined, I'm going to do this because this is important, and then you don't act in alignment with that, again, that incongruence comes into play, right? So what do you have to do? You have to think about your mechanisms and your processes. You have to have mechanisms and processes in place that are going to help you achieve your goals. And then you also have to have community. Now, community is going to remind you of the importance of doing those things, and it's also going to hold you accountable to your behaviors. And so if you have told your staff that recognition is important, and let's use your staff as your accountability or your community mechanisms. If you've told them, this is important to me, I want to make sure that we make time for this every week, and you tell them, if for whatever reason this doesn't come up, I would like one of you to prompt us that we need to cover this. And then what that does is that community that you've established, you've said that the value is important, you've said that the behavior and the mechanism is important, and then you're asking them to hold you accountable to that behavior and that mechanism, right? So then when you forget to do it, you're empowering your staff to say, oh, we said this is important and we didn't do it. Can we do this? And then that's a reminder to you that you're not acting in alignment with what you said was important. Therefore, we need to pause, we need to go back, and we need to practice, right? And yes, so that is why community is so important. So again, you have to think about it. You have to know and understand why it's important. You have to actually embody those behaviors and those actions by establishing mechanisms and processes. And then you also need to build community around whatever it is that you're saying is important, so that when you've processed your intentionality, you are being held accountable to reminding yourself to be intentional about this on an ongoing basis. So that's our chat for today on intentionality. And if you are interested in learning more about intentionality or embodying intentionality in your daily practice, check out any of my content below, or feel free to reach out to me on any of my platforms.